Sometimes we forget why we're here. It's easy to fall off track. These help us remember.
These battle scars don't look like they're fading, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battles.
Growing up I had a dream, something no one else could see. Tell me what it means when your faith is falling beneath your knees and you can't breathe. Everything you see reminds you of what you're not or something you won't be. You gotta take what you're given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe in the business. Not because they wanna do it, just because they heard it pays. And who the fuck wants to be poor knowing that's how we've been raised? Society is getting heavy, I can feel the weight. The pressure of success is like 100 million pounds of shame. And that's the reason I'm staying up late, trying to find a way to escape the stereotypes this day and age is making me feel like the only way I'll be happy is getting signed to a label and making money through rapping. I wanna share my emotion because this world is attacking the very principle of life that lets the people be happy. If you don't have a reason to breathe, why even live? These battle scars are impressions of everything that it is.
Don't look like they're fading, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battle scars don't look like they're fading, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battles.
Now, if I had a voice that reached 100 million people, I'd tell them there's a reason that we're all created equal. Cause some decide to be great and some decide a sequel to an average person's life is simply what they want to be. So you make your decision, all I know is what I'm given. Won't define the life I lead or the way I dwell in existence. I've seen a greater image on the walls of where I'm living, and the words twisted and scripted remind me of something written. Faith is a gift that is given down to the people. If one believes it, one receives it. It's given if it is needed. Don't ever think you're trapped in a life that you never wanted. Your options are infinite, that's some mathematical logic. I'm not saying I'm a prophet, I'm speaking for what it's worth. These lyrics define my prayers and these battle scars on my church. Not saying I'm a prophet, I'm speaking for what it's worth. These lyrics define my prayers, these battle scars on my church.
Don't look like they're fading, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battle scars don't look like they're fading, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battles.
Well, hello everyone. How are you doing tonight? I didn't get a chance to do this last night. I couldn't do 2 shows last night. It was just too much. So put it till today. Did a protest earlier today, and like a dumbass, when I was trying to flip the camera around for the body cam, I didn't hit the flip switch properly. So it just filmed my stomach the whole time rather than filming outwards. Oh well. It was fun though. It was fun. They probably had maybe 50 people there, the Medicare for All people, and then there was me and Wayne, the two of the loyal opposition. But I wanted to show you guys the signs we brought down because, you know, I've got like a sign fetish. Any opportunity to hit the streets and like have signs printed. So here's our anti. Now some of these can be used for multiple issues, but these were the ones specifically to be used in the debate. And counter protest today. So we the counter protest to Medicare for All. They were rallying for Medicare for All. Wayne and I were down there counter rallying, and we met quite a few libertarians on the street, not ones that came to join us, just people that were walking by that agreed with us. So here's the first one. Government is the reason we can't afford health care. Because the thing is, with the Medicare for All people, we agree on the problem, that the current system sucks. What we disagree on is the solution. Let me see, what else? We got 6 of them here that I had printed up. Okay, yep. Government healthcare is Dr. DMV. Let's see what this, this is a pretty generic one, but good ideas don't require force. 3 more here. Government healthcare is equal mediocrity. Oh, yeah, of course you gotta have this. Grandma! The death panel will see you now. And funny enough, I don't know if somebody just wasn't getting this sign, because there were a few of the Medicare for All people. And thank you, about the nails, thank you, who liked this sign, and I'm like, they either hate their grandma or they didn't get what was going on. We got some shrieks of approval for that sign, so I guess there's grandmas out there that, I don't know. And then here's the one that I was carrying: nothing is a right that forces others to do something for you. And I chose this one rather than the grandma one, because a lot of their signs said healthcare is a human right. So this was in direct response to them. So yes, we were doing that today. So that was fun. And I figured that tied in really well with the community activism we're going to be talking about tonight. Next week is chock full of stuff. Tomorrow, doing Cult of R1R with Mike Seebeck. So we'll have live Robert's Rules of Order. Please come and join us. Monday, man, I listened to that interview of Michael Malice with Lex Friedman, I don't know how to pronounce his last name. Very intense, very good, lots of great quotes. So Monday for the Liberty Boudoir, we will be dissecting that interview between Michael and Lex. I'm not sure what I'm doing Monday night. Tuesday night, I'm having Steve Dasbach on as a guest, because this subject keeps coming up. People keep saying, why wouldn't it be a good idea if we nominated our presidential candidate on the odd year before the elections? This keeps coming up, and it's wonderful that people keep having these ideas, but the first thing you got to ask when you think you have a new idea is, A, is it new? And B, if it's not new, has it been done before? And if it has, why isn't it still being done now? We used to nominate our candidates on odd years, all the way up through, I think, 96. And then we switched. So the question is, why don't we do it that way anymore? We don't want to be flipping, flopping back and forth, okay? So Steve Dasbach is a former national chair, former executive director. He has some thoughts on why it is not a good idea to nominate our candidates the odd year before. So I'd like to hear his thoughts. Now, I know Spike Cohen and Sasha Cohen believe it is a good idea. So maybe I'll have them on at some other point. But Steve has the experience of being in this party a long time, being national chair, being the campaign manager for the Joe Jorgensen campaign. I really think he carries a lot of weight in this subject. The following Tuesday, I'm having the chair, though they call them the leader, which I just think is funny. They don't call him the chair, they call him the leader. I'm going to call him Dear Leader, I think, the whole time. Tim Moen from the Libertarian Party of Canada. Tuesday night also, this will be pre-recorded, but it'll be premiered live, is episode 2 of Unconventional on LPTV, which is your guide to becoming a very good national delegate. So, oh, and also one of my top tier patrons, they get to ask for me to cover a topic a month, and I am covering a patron topic this coming up week, one suggested by Clayton. So Clayton, if you're listening, this is coming up this week. Speaking of patrons, I need to put on my glasses or I can't see what I'm doing. Alrighty. I do want to put this up here because I always invite everyone, if you can, if you could become a patron of the show. You know, there's normal attrition. People cannot always support forever. You know, people's financial situations change. And I have lost a few patrons this past month, not due to any kind of dissatisfaction, just due to financial situations change. So if you're now in a position where you can become a patron, please consider doing so. It would help me make up the shortfall. I'm trying to hit a really big milestone, but it seems like it's 2 steps forward, 3 steps back sometimes. So I would really appreciate your help if you can. And of course, as always, super chats are always welcome and invited. Alrighty, let me put on my headphones because I'm going to need to listen to some audio. Let's get on to the Castle Rock meeting now. So this is the second, let me set the scene. This is the second quote unquote hearing where they're deciding as to whether to put certain tax initiatives on the ballot. We're going to do the intro. Okay. It's the town manager. I couldn't stand sitting through the whole town manager presentation once again. So I extracted out certain clips from the town manager and the town attorney. And then we'll play the testimony that I did, that Wayne did, and that George Teal did. All right. So here we go with the town manager.
Dwell a lot more on this. You all have seen it. You all have seen the memo now. It's been sitting out on the website since March. So we looked for some of the best avenues, and we came up with what you see before you in regards to the ordinances.
Okay. Just wanted to show that, you know, they do these fancy little charts, and you saw the little graphics. It wasn't also pretty, just pretty graphics about stealing from people. And you'll see that they had all the different categories that they thought could work, okay? Makes me mad. But next scene.
If we do what is being recommended by staff and which you authorized us to draft an ordinance on, do a $7 per square foot new housing construction tax that only applies to apartments and new residential structures. A one-time tax does not apply to anyone's single-family existing residence in Castle Rock today. Doesn't apply to your home, doesn't apply to my home, doesn't apply to anybody's home that lives within Castle Rock right now.
Okay, so this is what's interesting. You notice how he was stressing, oh, here's this new tax that we're going to ask the voters to approve, but it won't affect you, and it won't affect me. Oh, so you're just proactively screwing people that don't yet live in Castle Rock. Stunning and brave. It's so easy to pass taxes on people who aren't there to have a say in it yet, isn't it? Talk about taxation without representation. And you'll see that nearly all of these tax initiatives that they're promoting pretty much affect people who don't actually live in Castle Rock. So people in Castle Rock are voting to tax people that don't live in Castle Rock. Makes me mad.
Here's just some additional statistics again. Again, people said, well, why is this happening all of a sudden? We've had this under discussion here now for a year and a half in regards to the need to do something for police and fire. And also, really, we've talked about a lodging tax for some time. We now appear that we have got a developer on the west side of I-25 that's going to develop the Dawson Trails, formerly called the Dawson Ridge development within the town. You all will make all of the land use decisions in regards to that. But they know, I talked to one of the principals today, they know that the town is going to expect them to financially participate in that funding, several $1 million. They're not going to write that check. They're going to have a Metro District issue debt, and that property will then pay for that obligation over time. The challenge is that if they pay us, that will put our revenue over the Tabor cap. Well, what's the problem with that? Well, then we have to then refund that revenue back in order to comply with Tabor. We need a timeout from that Tabor revenue restriction. it's not a timeout from all of the Tabor requirements. We still have to go to the voters each and every time that we would want a tax of any type and a tax increase of any type. This is just to allow us to keep the revenue, the excess revenue for police, fire, and transportation road purposes, including an interchange. If we are fortunate and Douglas County gives us funding for the interchange, similar situation. If we receive that revenue counts as Tabor revenue. So we need to have that timeout to be able to collect that revenue over this period of time. The other reason why we're talking about that Tabor timeout is that we are getting more revenue this year than we had budgeted, more revenue than we got last year.
Okay. First, let me do a recap as to what Tabor is. Tabor is short for Taxpayer Bill of Rights that we have in Colorado. And in summary, it's if a municipality, some kind of governmental taxing entity collects more in taxes than it is budgeted to spend, including projected growth, it has to refund that money back to the taxpayers. And they're always trying to find ways to keep their excess taxes. Now, they talked about a new development and how the developer is having to contribute towards the impact that it's going to have. That, new development is, we need more fire, police, whatever. That money, though, is already built in. As you saw, they were already setting up a metro taxing district where those new homes were going to pay for that over time. So why do they need this new tax of $7 a square foot? The developers are already paying impact fees. Did they not plan those sufficiently before? Did they not project in our budget the growth appropriately? No, I think they did do that. They just want to keep additional money. They're finding ways to spend additional money. So they want to, if anything is collected in excess, to keep that money. And they mentioned this interchange because we have I-25 exit that's about to fail, where they need to build a new one, and Douglas County might contribute towards that, which they say will put us in excess of Tabor. But why then do we need a timeout from Tabor for everything? Why don't you just accept out those particular monies and just put a pin in that, because that will come up again some more. But you notice the town manager, he's just saying a lot of blah, 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 blah. But he's not really giving you any meat.
But what we're asking the voters to approve, and the voters are the only ones that can decide this. You decide to put it on the ballot. The voters ultimately decide.
Yeah. That's their get out of jail free card. Oh, you're not deciding. You're just deciding to put it on the ballot. Well, that is a certain privilege, isn't it? To be able to bypass the petitioning requirements and put things on the ballot. You don't get to escape responsibility by going, we're just putting the question before the voters. We're not deciding, but you're deciding to put it before them. That is salting the soup. If these things are so important, why don't you make these special interest groups petition like you're making everyone else petition? And you'll see I bring that up. So they keep stressing, but it's the taxpayers. Yeah, the affluent taxpayers are voting to screw people who don't live in Castle Rock yet. Oh, yeah, that's real equitable. Or the poor people who are in the minority in Castle Rock.
What we're asking the voters to approve is, if we do receive excess revenue, and only if we receive that excess revenue, it will be placed in a separate fund, completely accounted for, and it can only be spent on police, fire, and the road interchange transportation purposes that you all approve by budget. So there's all that public process involved in that as well. We did modify them from some of the earlier drafts that we had looked at. One of the comments was accounting of the money. How will we know if it just all goes to the general fund so you have a separate account. How will we know that that's done? So we worked with our accounting staff and we looked at the different accounting standards. And what we're recommending in the ordinances is that for each of those revenue sources, a separate fund will be established. So for the new housing construction tax, there will be a new housing construction tax fund. All of the revenue that we get from that tax goes in. Under the ballot language, it can only be spent on police and fire. That's where we'll show all of those expenditures going out. We may have a couple of firefighters and police officers that are paid out of both the general fund and that new housing construction fund, but that's not unheard of. We've got town employees that are paid out of different funds. The bank still cashes the check accordingly. And we'll have that for all of the different funds, including for if the Tabor fund. We think that we're going to have excess revenue this year based upon coming out of the pandemic this year. There may be some years it doesn't receive any new revenue, but we'll be able to account for that revenue coming in and that revenue then going out, as we've set out for police, fire, and then the road interchange type projects. That's where we would put, for example, any contributions from either Douglas County or any metro district in regards to that, so we can show that as well. I think that's there's other ways to do it through a separate account, but a separate fund is even cleaner and we hope more transparent. So that was a helpful suggestion that we tried to respond to.
Okay, that is a victory. If you guys remember from the last thing I did on Castle Rock, I nailed them about the fact, oh, you're just having a separate line item, but you're not actually earmarking these funds. So now they are earmarking them. But notice what he didn't say. Okay, this $7 a square foot new home construction tax is going into this special fund. But he didn't say, and he said it'll only go towards fire and police, but he didn't say it would only go towards what they can account for as the extra fire and police needed because of those new homes. How much you want to bet that they're going to decrease the normal budget and the normal line item for police and fire that we were already paying for, whether or not there were new homes, and start dipping into that other fund to pay for police and fire that have nothing to do with the growth? How much you want to bet? You know my happy ass will be auditing these financial statements, because he was very clever in not saying that. And the thing here in Castle Rock, they're always saying we got a lot of law and order Republicans on the Castle Rock Town Council. When you have calls here, like 10 police cars come. I find it very difficult to believe that we need more fire and police. We're not an elderly community that has a lot of medical incidents to need EMTs and stuff like that. I mean, we have them, but that we need more. And our police are freaking bored. This is a bedroom community.
Construction tax sort of establish our rationale. If you go to the second page, bottom of the first page, and continuing on the second page, what we
just FYI, this is the town attorney now presenting the ordinance language that's going to be on the ballot.
Is we set out the text of the town code provisions that will be adopted should the voters decide to approve the new housing construction tax. Essentially, we once again set out the rationale in section 010. We use 020, as you scroll down to the bottom of the page, to set out definitions.
Okay. I don't know why I even extracted that out, except just to really because I'm just so pissed off that they're taxing future Castle Rock homeowners that don't even live here yet. But let's continue.
Notice that we define various things like dwellings and building permits. And well, you'll see the reason why as we get to Section 030 on page 3. Essentially, that is really the operative section. The imposition of the tax, we're imposing a tax on all new housing construction within the town of $7 per square foot of usable space. We define new housing construction as the construction of any one-family, two-family, or multi-family dwelling that requires the issuance of a building permit. It shall also include the construction of a new accessory dwelling unit. But what it does not include is even more important. When we alter, enlarge, convert, reconstruct, remodel, rehab, demo, move, or repair an existing dwelling, this tax is not paid. It is a one-time only tax, and it's issued and it's due at the time that the building permit is issued. If you notice, we do have some adjustments, and those adjustments are called out in our ballot question. In future years, we will adjust the maximum tax rate of $7 for inflation.
Okay, so, hey, this tax ain't ever going away. It's not as if they think that they could staff and then we have sufficient staff. Because there does get to be a point where, you know that old saying that two can live as cheaply as one? That's not exactly true. But two people who live together do live cheaper than two people who live apart. So there gets to be a point where you have a community. You're going to catch up in the amount of fire and police that you need. It's going to get to a point where you don't need to keep adding at the same rate because you're just adding to existing communities. Yet, this tax ain't ever going away, and it's going to go up. And as it goes up, they don't need to go to the voters again because they put in it this time automatic increases.
And we use the Consumer Price Index for consumers in the Denver, Aurora, Lakewood statistical area, which is the area in which Castle Rock is located. That's not going to be considered a new tax or a tax rate increase.
Okay, isn't that clever? The taxes are going to go up, but it's not going to be considered an increase. What? What? To me, if your taxes go up, that's an increase. But they're doing it so they don't have to ask the voters anymore. They're just going to have them automatically go up.
Let's move on to ordinance number 015, which talks about the proposed lodging tax. Okay, once again, as soon as we see that up on the board, you'll notice there is a constant theme to these ordinances where we have a first page of recitals stating the rationale for the tax. A tax to fund the town's parks and recreation services. So we move down to the code section that will be adopted should the voters approve this tax. We make some changes to the code, to the existing code, to express what this tax will be, because the way we impose a lodging tax under our code and under state laws, it's a sales tax on lodging services.
Okay, I do want to just stop right here. Notice again, they're taxing people that don't live in Castle Rock. They're taxing people, they're adding to the cost of people to come visit our town, which hurts businesses. Because if you make it too expensive to stay here, they're not going to stay here. And this tax also applies to Airbnb. Continue though, but so brave for them to be taxing people who don't live here or will never live here.
So in addition to the existing sales tax, we have a 6% enhanced tax on lodging. And you'll find in subsection C of that first section that lodging has a very specific definition, which is copied directly from the state tax code. And it covers really the whole nature of a temporary use of rooms. Because if we have some sort of an arrangement to use the room for 30 or more days, that starts getting into the realm of an apartment. So it's no longer considered lodging for purposes of the state tax law and for purposes of the Castle Rock tax code. So if you go down a little bit further, we have another section that's amended. The reason that section is appearing is because 023, as it states right now, kind of spells out what our sales tax revenues are used for. And so we want to make sure that we call out the new fund that we are creating, and you'll see that change in subsection B. If you scroll a little bit further down, we're calling it, for lack of a better term, the Parks and Recreation Fund. So, if you note, the following section is where we establish that Parks and Recreation Fund. And so we're depositing all the revenues we get from that tax in that fund. And
Stopping here again, because now there's not even, at least with the new home construction tax, they can at least try to argue that the impact fees aren't enough and that it's these new homes that are directly causing the increased expenses for fire and police. But there is no rational relationship here between a lodging tax and parks and recreation. Our parks and recreation are for the people who live here. They're not tourist attractions. It's not those kinds of parks. It's dog parks and crap like that. So we're taxing visitors for something that the town residents use. And if we're going to take a minarchist view, funding parks and recreation is not a proper function of government. You don't steal for it.
can only use that for parks and recreation purposes. Once again, a handy-dandy accounting method that we can show the public. We're doing what we are being told to do. And then finally, if you scroll around further, there's our ballot issue. And so, once again, the magic language to start off the question. And we're doing an additional 6% sales tax on lodging, used solely for parks and recreation purposes. And once again, essentially giving ourselves the exception to the Tabor spending limits in the tax question itself for this revenue stream.
And they're accepting it from Tabor, meaning the money they would normally spend for parks and recreation out of our normal general fund can now be directed to something else, some other pork project, because they've just now charged our parks and recreation to people who don't even live here and accepted it from Tabor. It gets worse the more I listen to this.
And this is affectionately known as a Tabor timeout. You come up with a lot of slang working in this area for a number of years, the term debrucing. Remember when that originated many, many years ago. And this is the type of question that we've asked our in the past.
Just want to stop there. It's called debrucing, which I think is funny, but the person who it's directed at doesn't think it's funny. It's called debrucing because the person who got us the Taxpayer Bill of Rights is an activist by the name of Doug Bruce. So these politicians think they're so clever that when they find ways to keep the stolen money, they call it debrucing. I thought it's funny. Doug Bruce doesn't think it's funny.
Here in Castle Rock, we've I want to say in 2004, Dave, we did a 5-year Tabor timeout. The voters allowed us the freedom to do. Once again, it's important. This is all at the behest of the voters. They have the choice to say yes. They have the choice to say no. And that's what Tabor does. That gives that power to the voters. And so...
Is it really, though, at the behest of the voters? You should say at the behest of the majority of the voters that can oppress the minority of the voters, because I'm a voter and I say no.
This is an effort to retain excess revenues for a 10-year period. I think you'll see as you scroll down, we have the rationale spelled out, and we've adopted a code provision here that sets forth what we're going to do with these excess town revenues. And you'll note that we use a definition. You'll find this in the question, excess town revenues cap. It means that what we want to do is create a cap going forward for the future in this question.
Okay, I want you to pay real close attention here because a lot of people didn't catch this. So, they're now also looking to redefine our revenue cap. But they're redefining our revenue cap during a 10-year period of time in which there is no constitutional limit on our revenue cap because they're asking for a timeout from the constitutional limitation. So do you see what they're doing? During a period of exception in which we will have higher than normally allowed revenues, they're now wanting to make those exceptions the new ceiling. Sneaky little bastards.
Because by the end of 10 years, this town's going to be very different. It's going to have a very different amount of annual revenues, and we want to adjust upward and be able to keep providing the type of services that our residents will have come to expect during this 10-year period. So we define these provisions, and in page 2 we create the operative sections. First, under subsection B, and if you scroll back down there, thank you, Shannon, we basically say that for each fiscal year beginning on the 1st of January 2021, but ending before January 1, 2031, the town's going to be authorized and to retain and spend all town revenues in excess of the limitation on local fiscal year spending imposed under Tabor. And that's an interesting definition because Tabor defines fiscal year spending essentially as all revenues that the town receives during the course of a fiscal year. And it gives a very small list of types of revenues that are excluded. And I think one of the things that our town manager has mentioned is not in that laundry list. There's revenues from the state and other Colorado local governments. That gets counted towards the town's fiscal year spending amount. So,
okay, put a pin in that because they're also pulling a fast move here. Now remember, under Tabor, excess taxes collected from the citizens get refunded back to the citizens. Or, and I'm making an assumption here, but the county commissioner somewhat confirms this. In other words, you get a refund back to the people who paid it. Like if you didn't pay any taxes, you're not getting a Tabor refund. So, if the county gives us money that puts the town in excess of Tabor, it's the county that would get refunded back that money, But what if the county doesn't want it refunded? Put a pin in that.
As Mr. Koros has said, if we get revenues from the Colorado Department of Transportation, Douglas County may wish to contribute. I am not going to ask our commissioners back there, so, but I think there's an indication of a positive vote there. Sorry to put you on the spot, Commissioner Teal. There we go. Okay, but also, as Mr. Corliss mentioned, this includes metro districts because they are Colorado local governments. And that's where that contribution will come from, a metro district, the county, the state. And so what happens when that money comes in, it's counted towards the fiscal year spending base of the town. And that is really the most bottom line, clear explanation I can give you for why the town is seeking this relief. Because we know it's going to come in. We expect it to come in sometime in the next 10 years. We don't know when, because we don't know when we can build this interchange. We know it's roughly within a time period.
Okay, also wanted to point out something here. There's this big interchange that they keep pushing the panic button on. They say they don't know when we're going to build it, but it's going to be within these 10 years. That's why they're justifying a 10-year timeout, because they can't narrow it down any more than that. And I'll also point out these metro districts that he's sounding the alarm about. Those are, just as you heard earlier, a funding mechanism set up by the developers. It's not an actual governmental entity. It's a bond issue, in a sense, that the homeowners of the new developments pay into. So it is something that can be refunded directly back to those homeowners if the funds if they're in excess of growth with budget.
So that is the first operative section. Second section, just as important. Notwithstanding any provision of law to the contrary, and it takes us in the future, in 2031 and beyond, we are authorized to retain and spend all town revenues that do not exceed the excess town revenue cap for the given fiscal year, even if they would otherwise exceed the fiscal year spending amount of paper. This accounts for the adjustment over the years that we'll see in town revenues. And excess town revenues cap is pretty much given the same definition as it was back in 2004, because this is not a new idea. It's something that the voters have approved before. And it means an amount that's equal to the highest total town revenues for any fiscal year during that 2021 to 2030 period. And that amount is adjusted each year, like Tabor allows, for inflation and the percentage change in local growth, the qualification or disqualification of enterprises, and debt service changes. So it is essentially copying a historical act that the town voters approved approximately 17 years ago. So, in subsection C, you'll note that we create the excess revenues fund. And we limit what those excess revenues can be used for. Police services, fire and emergency medical services, and roads and other transportation purposes, and we call out the Crystal Valley interchange as an example. I think we want to be very clear about that. And so we then turn to page 3, and we have our ballot question. And so we want to make sure that people understand this is not like the other 3 questions that contained a tax increase. This does not. So
That's being cagey. Technically, is it not a tax increase? Okay. If you were due a refund of your taxes, but you didn't get that refund, which would reduce your net taxes, isn't that a tax increase? I think so.
we make it clear we're not raising taxes. We're going to use the money solely for those purposes.
Lawyers and town managers. I thought the politicians were bad. Okay, think we're getting to the testimony now. It's myself, then Wayne, then Douglas County Commissioner George Teal. And George Teal's testimony is very interesting because he used to be on Castle Rock Town Council and he's voted against similar things in the past. He's an actual conservative.
Thank you. I thought that didn't seem like it was on. I'm going to not address everything I did address last time, but I am going to. I saw that some of my comments seem to be referenced by some of the town employees. And yes, this is a question of the proper role of government in one sense, but it's not really that. It's views on the proper use of force. Because once again, you are forcibly taking money from people. And it is force upon another peaceful person up for debate or popular vote. I say it's not. And that is something I'm calling each of you to. I did happen to look up, because it's public record, the partisan registration of at least 4 of you claim to be Republicans. Not that I am, I'm a Libertarian, but I thought that there was pretty clear views on the proper role of government, at least from ostensibly Republicans, and I call you to what you claim to believe. However, there's other issues here. I noticed the disparaging term D. Bruce. That's a Colorado resident who was an activist, and I suggest that we do not refer to our activists in those sense. I got to meet with Doug Bruce about these things that were going on in our town, and he pointed out something interesting to me in the Tabor Amendment, where it says that these can only be approved up for a delay of 4 years. So I'm wondering how you're getting around that. Referendum C did allow up to 5 years. But now all of a sudden, 10 years? I think the town is opening itself up to a lawsuit with that. I don't think you can do that. And my question also is, if the issue really is these potential funds coming from the county or some metro districts, why aren't you just excluding that? It seems like such a big deal is made of that, but it's not narrowly carved out. And I noticed also a very clever sleight of hand, perhaps I'm misunderstanding something, in the ballot language that, you know, how we don't like when the federal government puts in multiple issues under one ballot, but redefining, and it is a redefinition, of the spending cap in something entirely unrelated is not proper. And I noticed how you defined it as the maximum revenues under a Tabor timeout. That is really, really clever. If you're going to do that under a separate measure and don't do it under already an exception of a Tabor timeout. Because that really, really, I was like, oh, that was pretty clever. Growth brings in additional revenue inherently. So if we are having growth, and I agree, growth is good, it should be paying for itself, and the town should be working for it to pay for itself. The last thing is I'm going to just reread something I had sent you guys by email. And I understand that you feel that you're simply asking the voters to decide, and fine, that's well enough, though I don't think stealing my money should be up for popular vote. And I don't think stealing your money should be either. I asked this town council to let the voters decide if they'd like to try RCV for the mayor's race. And I was pretty much dismissed out of hand, except by Councilmember Johnson. And this seems to me to be very inequitable. If you're going to be referring to things that are self-serving to the town, such as tax measures, I ask once again that you live by these principles and allow the voters to decide on RCV by also referring that question. But perhaps it might put some seats up for risk. And if these other things are so important, and you're telling people who want RCV to have to petition, why aren't you asking people who want to force me to pay for parks to petition for it? That's not your job to be salting the soup, as it was, to automatically put it on the ballot when you're not willing to do that for other issues. And I see my time is up, and I'm sure my husband will add to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen Ann.
Yeah, you can tell they're tired of hearing from me. They are. My mic wasn't on when I first got up there, where I said, "Here I am again, back like a bad penny." So now Wayne turns on the rocket boosters because he's pissed off. Okay, I always am pissed off, but Wayne usually is very nice. He wasn't. You'll see. You'll be proud of him. Here he goes.
Next up, I have Wayne Harlos.
Good evening, Mayor and Town Council. I'm going to speak once again about my objection to at least 3 of the 4 measures. The first one is the fee that the consumers that are buying new homes will have to pay in order to buy a new home. I have a lot of real estate clients that are newly moving into the Castle Rock area. I have some young couples that are trying to get started right now. And if right now, with the increase of the prices of the new home that are being proposed, you each are individually culpable for making it impossible for them to buy a home. They can't buy a resale home because they don't have the money to pay over appraised value. They can buy a new home. But if you increase the cost of that home $15,000, they will not be able to buy a home, period. If you vote for this and you put it on the ballot, you are each culpable for that. Next item is the sales tax increase. I find it unconscionable that anybody would want to put their hands in the pocket of the people that are struggling the worst. The people that are sitting on our town council board, the majority of the people that are here, they're not struggling with an additional $100 a month on food taxes or even $20 a month on food taxes. So it doesn't affect you. What about the people that can't pay their light bill? You're ignoring them and you're going to stick your hand in their pocket? That's unconscionable. And you're all culpable for that if you allow this to get on the ballot. The last one is the tabor restriction. It's been said, it was said here tonight, it was on the town website, this is without raising taxes. That's disingenuous. If somebody has a refund coming to them and you deny that to them, you are raising their taxes. The people that need that money back. The people that are in the upper end of the income range, it's not going to change their lives. But for people that can't afford to put shoes on their kids' feet, it's going to affect them. It doesn't seem to matter in this group. I think it should. I'm passionate about this because I've seen too many people that have been hurt by government actions, and these government actions that I'm speaking of specifically are hurtful to the people that are on the lower end of the income ranges. If you want to make Castle Rock an area that just caters to the affluent, why don't you put that on the website? Because that's exactly where we're going here. I thought we valued all people. People that are on the upper end of the income range and people that are not. If this gets on the ballot, we are sending a signal out to the world that Castle Rock doesn't care about you unless you make a certain amount of money. That's all I had for tonight.
Thank you, Wayne. Next up, I have.
Okay, he was mad, but he's correct. Absolutely correct. And we just got a little bit more. I want you to listen now. Everything I told you to put a pin in. All the panic buttons they were pushing. So next up is Commissioner George Teal, who used to serve on the Castle Rock Town Council. He's an actual fucking Republican. And see what he has to say.
I've never spoken from this position in this room before. Hi, everybody. Honored Mayor, honored council members, friends, partners. Thank you for hearing me out tonight. I'd like to speak out on this. Well, actually, the mayor asked me a little bit ago, am I here tonight as your commissioner, one of your 3 county commissioners, or am I here as a resident? And I asked him, can I be both, please? And so I would like to give greetings from my colleagues, Commissioner Abe Layden, Commissioner Laura Thomas. However, not all of my comments tonight will be as a representative of your Board of County Commissioners. The first area I'd like to address you on is a couple things that have been brought to me as information that has been shared with you during this process pertaining to, well, I can assure you, Douglas County does love Castle Rock. And it is the intent of Douglas County to financially assist Castle Rock with the Crystal Valley Ranch interchange. That is in our planning at this moment. One of the items of information that I believe has been shared with you is the idea that were you to go over your Tabor surplus here in the town of Castle Rock, due to the county's contribution to the Crystal Valley Ranch interchange, the county will want to receive that refund back. I can assure you tonight that is not a reflection of the county, of county policy here in Douglas County, Colorado. It's been shared with you that were you not to pass this Tabor timeout, then, and you were to then the county would not plan or provide financial assistance for the Crystal Valley Ranch interchange. I want to assure you tonight that is not a reflection of the policies of your Board of County Commissioners. It is the intent. I'm sure you all know me. You all have my cell phone number. I can assure you, it is very much my intent to make sure that county funding is provided. I can't tell you the amount right now because I don't know what it is, but it's substantial to assist with the interchange, building the interchange at Crystal Valley Ranch and I-25. So now I'd like to not speak to you as one of your 3 Douglas County Commissioners, but as a resident. I'm the guy that lives at 931 Eaglestone Drive. I've been saying that up there, either in Karen's seat or in Tim's seat for years. As that guy who's a resident, I would ask you to turn away from the idea of doing a Tabor timeout. Yes, 2004, the town did do a Tabor timeout, use that money to build the Plum Creek Parkway, really connecting the Meadows neighborhoods and the Plum Creek and Crystal Valley Ranch area where I live. In 2015, the town did make a different decision. We did not pursue a Tabor timeout, but we did go back to the public when that surplus arrived and ask for the town to retain it for very much the similar uses that we did see the counselor outline. This fund would be used that would be accrued through the Tabor timeout. I would ask, as a resident, as not even as the guy who used to sit up there in your position, but as a resident, that you pursue that course of action. With that said, thank you so much for hearing me out this evening. I know exactly what you're going through. Believe me, I've sat in your seat, I walked in your shoes, and I understand the challenges you're undergoing. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, George Teal and Commissioner Teal.
Okay, I didn't, because I didn't want to make this too long. Their comments after our comments, ooh, one of those ladies was mad. She was mad. I think she was thinking that I was accusing her of taking bribes or something, where I said, oh, you guys have something to gain from this. You don't have... The only, you know, they act as if the only way politicians can gain something is by bribes. No, maybe it'll make you easier to get reelected because you're kissing the ass of the cops and the firefighters. How about that? But they were mad. And then, in response to George Teal saying, why don't you just ask the voters when this money comes in from the county to retain this money from the county, even though we won't want it back and you're going to be able to retain it anyway. Why don't you do that? All of a sudden, this 10-year window goes out the window, and they go, oh no, we're going to be needing this money within the next 2 years. Then why aren't you just asking for a 2-year Tabor timeout? Why 10 years, which you're not allowed to do, if you caught what I had said? by Constitution, they're only allowed to do up to 5 years. I do not know how they're justifying this 10 years. I wrote them and pretty much saying, even though I think it would be great fun to sue your asses, you probably should do it right the first time. And she was one of the Republicans I called out. She was one who's registered Republican. At least the lady who is so hot on making everything about parks, she's a progressive, okay? But the 4 Republicans on there, George Teal is an actual Republican. He was the commissioner. He's a good friend of Wayne and I. More a good friend of Wayne's. He helped Wayne and George Teal successfully petition 2 years ago to make the mayor an elected position rather than an appointed position. Because it used to be the town council appointed their own mayor. Now it's an elected mayor. And I'm trying to get the mayor elected by RCV, and they're refusing to put that on the ballot. Wouldn't even hear a presentation from RCV Colorado. Wouldn't even entertain it. Yet look how hot they are to do all these tricks. I can tell you, if I'm running next year against Karen Johnson, I know what all my issues are going to be. It's going to be the same issues that Wayne had. Being opposed to Tabor timeouts and being opposed to the income tax. But I'm also going to be opposed to taxing people who don't even live here, because that is like, if you're going to buy into the whole, American mythology, that is the worst of taxation without representation. So, I couldn't take any more, so I didn't extract out any more. The reasons why I am sharing these things, A, for people who might live in Castle Rock, who might be searching and find this on YouTube, but it's also to educate the other libertarians who are watching, to encourage them to get involved in their local towns, to hear how these things go, to hear how certain arguments can be made. So it's edification and education. And we will go to, I think there's going to be the third hearing on this, and we'll go, and it won't make a difference, but we'll go. Maybe they'll go from the 10 years to 5 years, because they can't do 10 years, as far as I understand, and I even asked Doug Bruce about it, the guy who wrote the constitutional amendment. Like, if he knows it, he's been following it. So, that's it for today. Tomorrow, Cult of RONR marathon. I will probably be starting about 1 Mountain. That's what time Mike and I usually get everything set up. Probably will not be doing a show tomorrow night, because there'll probably be 3 or 4 hours of Robert's Rules of Order. Monday, the Michael Malice with Lex Fridman. Gonna go over that interview. Lots of good stuff. And JJ, you're gonna want to listen to the Liberty Boudoir on Monday, because Michael Malice answers your question, why don't you just move or renounce your citizenship? He gets into that. And Michael Malice does way better job than I could, and plus he's adorable. Now, you're probably not into guys, so you might not think he's adorable. He's adorable, though. Like, just absolutely in love with Michael Malice. And if you're into guys, then maybe you'll think he's adorable, too. No judgment here. I'm a libertarian. Tuesday night, Steve Dosbach talking about why it's a bad idea to nominate our candidates in the odd year before the election years. I want everyone to hear his point of view, because Sasha Cohen has been going around promoting the other. And what people have asked, and I think is a good compromise, is maybe nominate earlier in the even year rather than May. Why aren't we doing it like in January, February? That, I think, is a reasonable proposition. Wednesday, I think it's Wednesday. It's either Wednesday or Thursday. I'm on Break the Cycle with Joshua Smith. So the 2 black sheep of the LNC, the 2 actual radicals who aren't members of the Radical Caucus, because there's rhinos on the fucking LNC, and the rhinos can cover their ears and pull up their big girl knickers, because we're going to say what we want. And then Friday, another history. So we've got a jam-packed week. And next Tuesday is Tim Moen, the current chair of the Libertarian Party of Canada. So I ask you guys once again as we're going out, I have lost a couple sponsors. Again, not due to any dissatisfaction, but just changing financial situations. If you find yourself in a place to be able to become a patron, I would super, super appreciate it if you could, or throw me a super chat every once in a while. All right, everyone, that is it for tonight. I've got a lot of L&C work to do. I've got like 50 emails to deal with. And yeah, I'm going to go do that. I will see you guys later. Love ya.
Given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe in a business, not because they want